The Ocean's Grand Master. A brief glimpse of the life and legend of Duke Kahanamoku, the incarnation of Aloha. Beginnings in the Kingdom of Hawaiʻi, circa 1890. Duke Paua Kahinu Mokoe Hulikohola Kahanamoku was born on August 24, 1890, in Honolulu, on the island of Oahu, in what was then the Kingdom of Hawaiʻi, just a few years before its overthrow and subsequent annexation by the United States. His mother, Julia Pa'akonia Lonokahikina Paua, and his father, Duke Halapu Kahanamoku, were part of a family line that was deeply rooted in Hawaiian culture and tradition. Duke's name, Duke, was not just a Western reference. It was originally bestowed in honor of the visit of the Duke of Edinburgh to the Hawaiian Kingdom at the time of Duke's father's birth. The father, also named Duke, passed that distinguished-sounding name onto his son. Even from birth it seemed young Duke was destined to be someone of note. His middle names, Paua, Kahinu, Mokoe, and Hulikohola, were evocative of his family's proud Hawaiian heritage. In Hawaiian tradition, names carry profound meaning, often referencing ancestral lines and important events. The name Paua was a nod to his family's genealogical ties, while Kahinu and Mokoe conveyed ceremonial and spiritual significance. Hulikohola, in some interpretations, can suggest transformation or forward movement, something that Duke would symbolize throughout his life, as he truly represented a wave of change for Hawaii and for the sport of surfing worldwide. He grew up as one of 9 children in Waikīkī, back when it was still a relatively quiet expanse of shoreline before the high-rise hotels and tourist throngs of the modern era. The Kahanamoku family's home was near the waters of Waikīkī Beach, and as a youngster, Duke could often be found splashing in the gentle waves that rolled onto the white sand. Duke's early childhood took place during a tumultuous time for Hawaii. Queen Liliuokalani's monarchy was overthrown in 1893, and Hawaii became first a republic, then a U.S. territory by 1900. Despite these massive political shifts, the Kahanamoku household maintained its devotion to Hawaiian customs, language, and values. Duke heard the stories of his ancestors, tales of great Polynesian voyagers who navigated by the stars, fishermen who wrangled the ocean's bounty, and aliai, Hawaiian royalty, who once graced the land. At night, under the glow of flickering lanterns or the gentle brightness of the Hawaiian moon, his uncles and grandparents would share legends of Ku and Hina, Pele and Kamapua'a. He listened enthralled to Molelo stories of how surfing itself was a sport of the ali'i, how ancient chiefs and kings tested their prowess on planks of koa wood to ride the waves with grace and courage. In those quiet moments, little Duke's eyes would light up like embers in the darkness, absorbing every word of the old Hawaiian chants and genealogies. In one recollection, Duke later told a reporter, "I was born with salt water in my veins," a simple line that captured his destiny. He quite literally grew up in the ocean. It was his playground, his refuge, and would become the arena in which he forged his legend. 2. The making of a Waterman. Duke's childhood in Waikīkī was shaped by his large extended family, which included many uncles and aunties living in the same neighborhood. The sense of community was strong, and as a boy, Duke had chores to do, like tending to taro patches or fetching water, but there was never a shortage of time for fun, especially in the calm, inviting waters off Waikīkī. When Duke was about 5 or 6 years old, his father began to teach him how to swim, or more accurately, how to refine a skill that seemed already ingrained in him. For the Hawaiian families whose day-to-day life revolved around the sea, swimming was taught as soon as a child could walk. As an adult, Duke would recount a fragment of his earliest memory of the ocean. Duke's father, circa 1896, gently speaking to young Duke on the beach. "Watch the wave, my son. Let it bring you back to shore. Do not fight it. You must feel the wave carry you." Young Duke, with a grin, "Yes, Papa, like I'm flying on the water." His father chuckled and nodded, satisfied with the youthful enthusiasm. Here was a boy who already respected the mana, spiritual energy, of the ocean, who felt a deep connection to the waves. Making his first board, growing up in a household with strong ties to tradition, Duke also learned ancient Hawaiian methods of board shaping. His first surfboard, as he would later recall, was a crude makeshift slab of wood, but it was his personal treasure. Long before the mass-produced boards of foam and fiberglass in later eras, young Hawaiian surfers crafted boards from local woods, koa, ulu, breadfruit, or willy-willy. The boards were often heavy, upwards of 100 pounds for the solid wood designs. Duke's earliest boards were smaller and less heavy, more manageable for a child, but still taught him the fundamentals of balance and wave riding. By the time he was in his preteen years, Duke was a regular fixture at Waikīkī Beach, catching waves with friends and members of his extended ohana family. The older beach boys watched in awe as this wiry youth seemed to dance on the crest of waves, always with an unassuming smile. Schooling. Although he attended public school, education for Duke during this time was fairly straightforward. Honolulu's education system at the turn of the century was a mix of missionary-founded schools and newer territorial public institutions. Duke learned English and American history, but he was also speaking Hawaiian at home. He excelled in physical activities, often outrunning and outswimming his classmates. He was less enthusiastic about sitting at a desk, but teachers noted that his sense of discipline and focus, built from hours in the water, repetitively perfecting strokes, served him well even in the classroom. The surf culture of old Hawaii. During Duke's youth, surfing had waned in popularity compared to its heyday in ancient Hawaii, mainly due to missionary influences in the 19th century that labeled surfing as frivolous or even sinful. However, Waikīkī remained one of the few places where surfing was still actively practiced. Local surfers, many of whom were part of Hawaiian families that had passed down surfing traditions, held on to the sport. Duke grew up in this somewhat diminished but still vibrant scene, and he was determined to keep surfing alive. He would soon accomplish far more than that. 3. Family life and community in turn-of-the-century Hawaii. Duke's upbringing was anchored by a tight-knit Hawaiian family that valued hospitality, music, and respect for nature. Family gatherings often included feasts, luau, with steaming plates of kalua pig, poi, lomi-lomi salmon, and haupia dessert. Duke was known to greet guests with a friendly grin and an offer to join the feast. The concept of aloha, love, peace, and compassion, was not an abstract idea in the Kahanamoku household. It was a living principle practiced daily, from the way they welcomed strangers to the way they reverently treated the aina, land, and the kai, ocean. Influences from royalty. Despite the monarchy's overthrow, the Hawaiian royal family still held cultural influence. Duke grew up hearing stories about King Kalakaua, the merry monarch, who had encouraged the revival of hula and surfing, and of Queen Liliuokalani, whose dignity and grace in the face of political upheaval inspired many Hawaiians. The memory of the ali's patronage of surfing was a source of pride. In that sense, Duke might have felt he was carrying on a royal tradition every time he ventured into the surf. Beach culture and music. Waikīkī, in the late 1890s and early 1900s, was a place where music filled the air. Steel guitars strummed softly, and ukulele chords rang out at sunset. Duke and his siblings would sing traditional Hawaiian songs, along with some contemporary tunes that sailors or visitors brought from the mainland. This blend of cultures, Hawaiian, American, Asian, and European, was already shaping Honolulu's identity. Duke would eventually become one of the earliest ambassadors of this Hawaiian spirit to the rest of the world. 4. Adolescence. Riding the waves to local fame. By his teenage years, Duke's prowess in the ocean was becoming legendary within his community. He had a quiet confidence and a relaxed charm that endeared him to both peers and elders. Early surfing achievements. Young men in Waikīkī often challenged each other to impromptu surf competitions. Who could catch the biggest wave? Who could ride the longest? Who could perform the flashiest turns? Duke excelled in all these friendly rivalries. His wave-riding technique was distinctly graceful. Arms outstretched just enough to keep balance, knees slightly bent, posture upright, and a broad smile on his face that seemed to say, "Isn't this the greatest thing in the world?" As the tourism industry slowly grew, more visitors started coming to Waikīkī, and hotel managers, noticing Duke's talent and personable demeanor, began to hire him and other local surfers as beach boys. These beach boys acted as surfing instructors, canoe guides, and entertainers for tourists. Duke quickly became a favorite. He taught people from all walks of life how to ride the gentle rollers of Waikīkī and introduced them to the concept of Hawaiian-style surfing, relaxed, welcoming, and always respectful of the ocean. Swimming, the next challenge. Alongside surfing, Duke's aptitude in swimming began to gain notice. He spent countless hours practicing various strokes in the warm Hawaiian waters. By his mid-teens, he was consistently the fastest swimmer among his peers. Local swimming meets saw him win event after event, breaking informal records in the 50-yard and 100-yard sprints. It was rumored that, given the right conditions, he might even be the fastest swimmer in the entire territory of Hawaii, an assertion that would soon be tested on the national and international stage. First glimpse of competition. In 1908, a local swimming coach named George "Dad" Center, a key figure later in Duke's career, saw Duke's potential and urged him to compete in more formal swim meets, not just the local beach contests. Dad Center was connected to the newly formed Amateur Athletic Union, AAU, which was bringing standardized swimming competitions to the islands. Under Dad Center's guidance, Duke began training with more structure. He worked on his freestyle stroke, emphasizing a flutter kick that would set him apart from other swimmers of the era. This was also around the time Duke's personality, amiable, humble, and quietly determined, was becoming as notable as his physical skill. People would say, he's as gracious as he is fast. 5. Breaking records. The road to the Olympics. The trials at Honolulu Harbor, 1911. In 1911, word got out that the AAU would be holding official meets in Hawaii, giving swimmers the chance to qualify for national competitions on the mainland. On a sunny August day in 1911, Duke, aged 20, stepped onto the dock at Honolulu Harbor for a 100-yard freestyle trial. The official in charge was prepared to time the event using a stopwatch, expecting to see good local talent, but not necessarily world-class times. When Duke dove into the harbor water, the spectators noted that he was practically flying across the surface. His windmill arm stroke, combined with a powerful flutter kick, propelled him in a way that was rarely seen on the mainland. As he touched the finish line, the timekeeper stared, incredulous, at the stopwatch. Duke had completed the 100-yard freestyle in 55.4 seconds, which was faster than the existing world record of 58 seconds held by the champion Charlie Daniels. There was immediate skepticism. Some officials suspected the course was too short or the timing was inaccurate. To quell doubts, they measured the course again, exactly 100 yards. They repeated the timing, which corroborated the earlier result. Duke's performance was real. Official timer, looking astonished. 55.4. That's an impossible time. Duke, catching his breath, giving a modest shrug. I just swam the way I always swim. This incredible feat launched Duke into the realm of serious sports speculation. Could this young Hawaiian, who spent most of his days surfing in Waikīkī, really be the fastest swimmer in the world? Soon enough, the AAU recognized the records, and Duke was on his way to the 1912 US Olympic trials. Journey to the mainland. Travel to the mainland was not as simple in the early 20th century as it would become later. Duke, accompanied by other Hawaiian athletes, boarded a steamship for a voyage of several days to California, then continued by train across the country. It was on this journey that Duke first experienced the wider American culture, bustling ports, large cities, and the curious stares of mainlanders who had never encountered a native Hawaiian, especially one as tall, around 6 feet, and athletically built as Duke. Upon arriving on the West Coast for the US Olympic trials, Duke's presence caused quite a stir. Many American swimmers used the orthodox trudgeon crawl or American crawl, but Duke's stroke was a refined version that some observers dubbed the Hawaiian crawl. He integrated a 6-beat kick, which made his stroke even more powerful and efficient. Performance at the trials. The official trials held in Philadelphia or Chicago, accounts vary, saw Duke breeze through the heats. Any lingering doubts about his abilities vanished as he clocked times close to his unofficial records. The American swimming community realized they had a potential superstar on their hands. The local press was intrigued by his exotic background, an islander who surfed on wooden boards and claimed to have learned to swim by chasing fish around Waikīkī waters. Duke qualified for the 1912 US Olympic team, bound for Stockholm, Sweden. For many Hawaiians, this was a historic moment. One of their own, a native Hawaiian, was going to represent the United States on the biggest athletic stage in the world. 6. Stockholm Olympics, 1912. Arrival in Sweden. In June 1912, Duke arrived in Stockholm with the rest of the US Olympic delegation. The journey itself had been long and filled with excitement, but the real challenge was still ahead. Duke was to compete in the 100-meter freestyle and the 400-200-meter freestyle relay. The Swedish climate, the language barrier, and the formalities of international competition were all new to him. While many of his teammates wore Western suits and ties, Duke's easygoing Polynesian manner set him apart. He would greet strangers with a big smile and an aloha, a word that few Europeans had heard before, yet his warmth and sense of humor quickly won over those he met. Historic wins. When the 100-meter freestyle event finally arrived, the pool was abuzz with anticipation. Some swimmers tried to psych each other out in the locker room. Duke just quietly readied himself, occasionally flashing a good-natured grin. At the sound of the starter's pistol, Duke dove in. His powerful stroke churned the water, and observers marveled at how he seemed to glide. In the final stretch, he pulled ahead of Australia's Cecil Healy and America's own Ken Huza, touching the wall first in a time of 1:03.4. This earned him the gold medal, making him not only the fastest swimmer at the Olympics, but also the first native Hawaiian to win an Olympic medal for the United States. Reaction and camaraderie. After the race, Cecil Healy famously congratulated Duke and acknowledged the Hawaiians' unmatched speed. Their sportsmanship and mutual respect was notable. Healy was one of the swimmers who had initially questioned Duke's official times back in 1911, but later became one of his staunch supporters. Cecil Healy, still panting, shaking Duke's hand. "Congratulations, old chap. That was splendid." Duke, flashing a big smile. "Mahalo? Thank you. You pushed me to swim faster." That same Olympics saw Duke and his teammates also competing in the 4x200-meter freestyle relay, capturing a silver medal behind the host Swedish team. The American quartet, with Duke as the anchor, overcame a rough start to finish an admirable second, a hero at home. While the Olympics unfolded thousands of miles away, the news made it back to Hawaii. Newspapers in Honolulu ran headlines declaring, "Hawaii's Duke Kahanamoku is the fastest swimmer in the world." The local community erupted in celebration, proud to see a native son excel on the global stage. Indeed, Duke's triumph was a source of immense pride for all Hawaiians, especially given the political circumstances of the islands. 7. Between Olympics, showcasing surfing to the world. Return to Hawaii. Upon returning to Honolulu after the 1912 Olympics, Duke was greeted like a conquering hero. The territory's officials organized parades, and crowds lined the streets, chanting his name and waving Hawaiian flags. Duke smiled and waved, both delighted and slightly overwhelmed by the adulation. He insisted that his successes were not his alone, but a testament to the spirit and support of his people. Back at Waikīkī, Duke picked up right where he left off, surfing, teaching visitors, and bringing an infectious sense of aloha to all he encountered. Yet something fundamental had changed. The world now knew of Duke Kahanamoku, and invitations for exhibitions and demonstrations began pouring in from the mainland and even internationally. Surf exhibitions in Australia and mainland US. Duke's next big adventure was a trip to Australasia, where he was invited to give swimming and surfing demonstrations. In late 1914 and early 1915, he travelled to Sydney, Brisbane, and other coastal regions of Australia. Australians were already keen swimmers, but surfing was still in its infancy there. Duke's exhibitions, in which he would paddle out on his board, skillfully catch waves, and sometimes ride tandem with locals, left spectators in awe. One particularly famous episode occurred at Freshwater Beach in Sydney on Christmas Eve, 1914. Duke famously shaped a surfboard from a local piece of timber and proceeded to demonstrate wave riding to the astonished Aussie crowds. This moment is widely credited as a key seed for the future explosion of surfing culture in Australia. Today, a statue and memorial plaque at Freshwater Beach commemorate Duke's historic demonstration. Local Australian boy, eyes wide in wonder. "Crikey! I've never seen anything like that." Duke, laughing kindly. "This is the best fun you can have in the water." Back in the United States, Duke also toured, giving swimming exhibitions in cities such as Chicago and New York. In some places, he gave impromptu surf demonstrations in wave pools or wave-generating machines, though these were far from the ocean. He would occasionally joke, "Nothing beats the real waves of Waikīkī." These tours did more than just showcase Duke's athletic talents. They introduced surfing to the broader public. Audiences who had never heard of surfing or had only read about it in travel literature now saw it performed by a world champion swimmer, lending it immediate credibility. Duke was effectively surfing's first global ambassador. 8. The 1920 Olympics in Antwerp. Postponed by war. The 1916 Olympic Games were cancelled due to World War I. Duke spent those years primarily in Hawaii, continuing to surf, train, and promote Hawaiian water sports. By 1920, when the Olympics were held in Antwerp, Belgium, Duke was 30 years old, an age at which many swimmers would consider retirement. But Duke was far from finished. Dominating the competition once more. In Antwerp, Duke once again proved his mettle. Competing in the 100-meter freestyle, he handily took gold with a time of 1:00.4, just shy of breaking the 1-minute barrier, which was an extraordinary feat at the time. His countryman and protege, Aloha, took silver, highlighting the strength of Hawaiian swimmers on the international stage. Duke also led the US foray 200-meter freestyle relay team to a gold medal, improving on the silver from Stockholm. At 30, he was still dominating an event typically ruled by younger athletes. His easy smile and sportsmanlike conduct were widely remarked upon in the press. One press snippet read, "Kahanamoku, the Hawaiian wonder, shows no signs of age as he glides through the water with the grace of a dolphin. Unassuming yet confident, this champion exemplifies the very best of the Olympic spirit." 9. The 1924 Olympics in Paris. A passing of the torch. By 1924, Duke's name had become synonymous with swimming excellence. Approaching 34 years old, he decided to make one more run at Olympic glory at the Paris Games. While he remained formidable, younger swimmers like Johnny Weissmuller, future Hollywood Tarzan, were making waves. The legendary 100-meter freestyle. The 1924 100-meter freestyle showdown featured Duke, his brother Samuel Kahanamoku, and Johnny Weissmuller. The final was a clash of the ages. Weissmuller, the brash and youthful phenomenon, versus the seasoned veteran Duke. Weissmuller won the gold in a time of 59.0 seconds, with Duke taking the silver in 1:01.4, and Samuel finishing with the bronze. It was a remarkable moment. Two Kahanamokus on the podium, overshadowed only by Weissmuller's new record. After the race, Johnny Weissmuller famously embraced Duke, expressing his admiration for the Hawaiian legend he had idolized. Weissmuller, catching his breath, "Duke, you're the reason I got into swimming. It's an honor to race against you." Duke, smiling, patting Weissmuller's shoulder, "The honor is mine. You have the speed of a kahuna's wave." Duke's silver in Paris would be his last Olympic medal. He had participated in 3 Olympic Games, earning 3 golds and 2 silvers in total, a record that firmly established him among the greatest swimmers of his generation. 10. LifeSaving Heroics. The 1925 Newport Beach rescue. One of the most dramatic episodes of Duke's life occurred off the coast of Newport Beach, California, in 1925. A fishing vessel called the Thelma capsized in heavy surf, throwing several fishermen into the churning waters. By chance, Duke was nearby with friends, testing the waters on their surfboards. Seeing the men in danger, Duke sprang into action without hesitation. Paddling through the rough breakers, he managed to rescue 8 men that day. He placed the injured on his surfboard and ferried them back to shore, battling relentless waves that threatened to throw him off balance. Many credited Duke's quick thinking and skill for preventing further loss of life. The incident made national headlines. Experts noted how Duke's surfboard rescue was a groundbreaking demonstration of what would later become standard ocean rescue techniques. His heroic act not only saved lives, but also showcased the practical utility of the surfboard, a tool for rescue, not just recreation. 11. A foray into Hollywood. Early roles. Duke's fame, good looks, and natural charisma caught the attention of Hollywood producers during his tours on the mainland. Between the 1920s and 1930s, Duke appeared in a number of films, often cast in roles that highlighted his Polynesian heritage or his physical prowess. Some of his notable film appearances include Lord Jim, 1925, Isle of Sunken Gold, 1927, The Pony Express, 1925. Typically, these roles were small and exoticized. Hollywood at the time had limited understanding or respect for genuine Hawaiian culture. Duke might appear as a Polynesian chief, a Pacific Islander warrior, or a silent native sidekick to the leading man. Nonetheless, Duke saw these appearances as opportunities to spread awareness about Hawaii and its people. He befriended many in the film industry, including John Wayne, who may have partially taken the nickname the Duke from his association with Kahanamoku, though this remains anecdotal. Navigating Hollywood's racial attitudes. Duke's experiences in Hollywood were not without challenges. Racial typecasting was rampant, and while Duke was generally well-liked, he confronted limitations on the roles he could play. His easygoing nature helped him get along with directors and co-stars, but behind the scenes he understood the broader social barriers. Nevertheless, the glimpses of Hawaii he brought to the screen, his regal bearing, his surfing scenes, and the aloha spirit he exuded, captured viewers' imaginations, leaving them curious about the islands. He was, in many ways, an informal ambassador for Hawaiian culture, even if constrained by the era's stereotypes. 12. The Ambassador of Aloha. Promoting Hawaii tourism. In the 1930s, as steamship travel to Hawaii became more common, territorial officials recognized the potential of tourism for the local economy. They turned to Duke to serve as Ambassador of Aloha, a figure who could personify the hospitable, welcoming spirit of the islands. Duke was happy to oblige, seeing an opportunity to boost his homeland and share its customs with the world. He traveled extensively in this capacity, attending tourism conventions, giving interviews, and meeting with influencers of the day. Wherever he went, he spoke proudly of Hawaii's beaches, its rich cultural heritage, and the joys of surfing. The phrase aloha, thanks to Duke, found its way into the vocabulary of Americans and many others around the globe. Surfing demonstrations and cultural exchanges. Even as he moved into his 40s and 50s, Duke continued to give surfing demonstrations. Whether he was in New York City for a tourism event or on the beaches of Southern California, he'd bring along a board, often a traditional wooden one, and show onlookers how to ride a wave in the Hawaiian style. He also advocated for preserving native Hawaiian traditions, from hula to language revitalization, at a time when such cultural practices were still often marginalized. Hawaii is more than just beaches, he would say in interviews. We have a beautiful culture, a heritage of seafaring and aloha. 13. Later years in civic service. Honolulu Sheriff. In 1934, Duke's popularity and stature in the community led to his election as Sheriff of Honolulu, a position he held until 1961. The office of Sheriff in Hawaii was later abolished. Though the role was often more ceremonial than that of a typical law enforcement official, Duke took the job seriously, aiming to strengthen relationships between local authorities and the community. His presence alone, symbolizing trust and fairness, was enough to diffuse many tense situations in a rapidly modernizing Honolulu. Personal life. Duke married Nadine Alexander in 1940. They had met at a beach function, and Nadine was immediately drawn to Duke's warmth and sincerity. They shared many happy years together, hosting family gatherings, supporting community events, and occasionally traveling. Duke was a devoted husband who showed the same aloha spirit at home that he did to the world. 14. Surfing's Golden Age and Duke's influence. The rise of surfing culture. By the 1950s, surfing began to explode in popularity in California, Australia, and other coastal regions, a phenomenon that would reach a fever pitch in the 1960s. The seeds Duke had planted decades earlier were now blossoming. Influential surfers like Tom Blake, George Freeth, and later Greg Knoll all drew inspiration from Duke's pioneering spirit and technique. Duke's enduring presence. Although Duke was past his athletic prime by this time, he remained an iconic figurehead. Young surfers, whether or not they had met him in person, revered the name Duke Kahanamoku. His photograph adorned surf shops. His story was shared in surfing magazines, and surfers in California would speak of him with the same reverence that baseball players reserved for Babe Ruth. Modern innovations versus Hawaiian tradition. Surfboards were evolving from heavy wooden planks to lighter balsa wood and eventually fiberglass, but the essence of surfing, the joy, freedom, and communion with nature, remained deeply tied to the Hawaiian heritage that Duke represented. Every time a surfer paddled out, there was an unspoken acknowledgement of the legacy of the ancient Hawaiian chiefs and the modern champion who had brought surfing to the world's attention. 15. Key moments and anecdotes. Meeting Franklin D. Roosevelt. In 1934, President Franklin D. Roosevelt visited Hawaii as part of a Pacific tour. Duke, then Sheriff of Honolulu, was part of the welcoming delegation. According to some accounts, Roosevelt extended his hand and congratulated Duke on his accomplishments in both sports and public service. FDR, shaking Duke's hand. "I've heard of your heroic rescues, Mr. Kahanamoku. Quite impressive." Duke, bowing slightly. "Thank you, Mr. President. It's my privilege to serve Hawaii." The meeting was brief but symbolically significant. A native Hawaiian local hero, greeting one of the most influential U.S. presidents of the era, exemplifying the bridging of cultures and the integration of Hawaii into the American sphere. A brush with racial discrimination. Despite Duke's fame, he was not immune to racial discrimination, particularly on the mainland. An oft-cited anecdote involved Duke being refused service at a whites-only establishment in Southern California. Observers were shocked, as Duke was already a household name. The incident underscored the racial attitudes of the time and Duke's personal challenges navigating them. True to form, Duke did not let anger consume him. He continued to treat others with respect, though he hoped that his life story would help change hearts and minds. 16. Honoring the father of modern surfing. Major competitions and the Duke Kahanamoku Invitational. By the 1960s, surfing competitions were becoming formalized. In 1965, the Duke Kahanamoku Invitational Surfing Championship was established at Sunset Beach on Oahu's North Shore. This event quickly became one of the most prestigious in surfing, drawing the world's best surfers and heralding the North Shore's massive winter swells. Duke, though elderly, often attended the events, greeting the competitors warmly. Many surfers felt it was a rite of passage to surf at an event named after the man who had legitimized the sport globally. 17. Later life and passing. Final years. In his final years, Duke remained in Hawaii, a revered figure who embodied the aloha spirit. Despite health issues that come with age, he still made appearances at community events, greeted dignitaries, and spent time with family. He was officially recognized as Hawaii's Ambassador of Aloha, a title given to him by the then territorial governor. Passing and memorial. Duke Kahanamoku died on January 22, 1968, at the age of 77. Per his wishes, his ashes were scattered into the waters off Waikīkī, the same waters that nurtured him as a child and shaped his destiny as the world's greatest waterman. His passing was mourned worldwide. In Hawaii, a profound sadness permeated the community. Flags were flown at half-mast, and tributes poured in from all corners, from surfers in Australia, swimmers in the United States, and dignitaries who had once shaken his hand. But the sense of loss was also tempered by a deep gratitude for all he had done to spread the spirit of aloha and the joy of surfing. 18. Duke's enduring legacy. Cultural resonance in Hawaiʻi. Today, Duke Kahanamoku is remembered as the father of modern surfing, but also as a vital cultural ambassador who shared the essence of Hawaiʻi, its warmth, traditions, and communal ethos, with the globe. His statue on Waikīkī beach stands with open arms, a tangible reminder of the openness and generosity he personified. For many Hawaiians, Duke remains a source of pride and inspiration, a man who never forgot his roots despite international fame and accolades. Through surfing, he reconnected the world with an ancient Polynesian tradition. Through his Olympic achievements, he challenged the preconceived notions of what a Hawaiian could accomplish on the world stage. Through his personal conduct, he showed the power of humility and kindness. A sporting pioneer. In the annals of sports history, Duke's achievements in swimming are still astounding. He was a 3-time Olympic gold medalist, won medals across 3 different Olympic Games, and set numerous records. But perhaps more than the medals, it was his iconic style and the near-mythical aura he carried that made him unforgettable. Sports historians argue that if modern training methods and technology had been available to Duke, he might have shattered even more world records. Regardless, the point remains that he was untouchable in his era. Influence on surfing's global expansion. The global surfing community reveres Duke not only for introducing surfing to places like Australia and the US mainland, but also for legitimizing the sport. Before Duke, surfing was often seen as a curious pastime, something associated with tropical island leisure. After Duke, it gained respect worldwide, eventually spawning surf brands, professional surfing circuits, and a global youth culture phenomenon in the mid-20th century, Duke as a symbol. Beyond the technical contributions, teaching wave riding, shaping boards, Duke's real gift was the spirit he infused into surfing. Those who took up the sport felt they were part of something bigger, a cultural lineage that traced back to ancient Hawaiian chiefs. As the decades rolled on, surfers might have changed their boards from wood to foam, but the underlying dream of riding a wave in harmony with nature remained intimately connected to Duke's legacy. 19. Remembrance and honors. Statues and memorials. Waikīkī statue, erected in 1990. The larger-than-life bronze statue of Duke stands on Kuhio Beach in Waikīkī, welcoming visitors with open arms. Lei are often draped around his neck by those who wish to honor his memory. Duke's Canoe Club. This famed restaurant in Waikīkī pays tribute to Duke's love for Hawaiian hospitality and ocean sports. Photographs and memorabilia line the walls, recounting stories of Duke's life and achievements. Surfing museums. Museums in California and Australia frequently feature exhibits on Duke, including some of his historic surfboards and photos from his demonstrations. In popular culture. Over the years, Duke has appeared in documentaries, books, songs, and even cartoons, each recounting his legendary feats. His face, with its friendly smile, is widely recognized by surfers, athletes, and Hawaiians alike. In 1965, he was inducted into both the International Swimming Hall of Fame and the Surfing Hall of Fame, cementing his place among the world's greatest aquatic athletes. In 1999, the United States Postal Service issued a Duke Kahanamoku commemorative stamp, featuring him riding a longboard on a classic Waikīkī wave. This honor recognized his influence on American sports and culture. 20. The spirit of aloha personified. A model of sportsmanship. Duke Kahanamoku's life story is more than a litany of records and accomplishments. It is a lesson in sportsmanship and humility. He stood as an example of how an athlete can rise to global fame, yet remain grounded in cultural roots and human decency. Stories abound of him consoling defeated swimmers, offering tips to younger competitors, and always wearing that trademark easy smile. A bridge between East and West. Hawaiʻi, straddling the Pacific between the continental United States and Asia, has always been a crossroads of cultures. Duke served as a living bridge, someone who understood Hawaiian culture deeply, but was also comfortable interacting with mainland Americans, Europeans, and Australians. His affability transcended linguistic and cultural barriers, embodying the inclusivity that Hawaiʻi strives to represent. Inspiring future generations. Duke's influence continues to ripple across time. Every time a young surfer takes to the water in Waikīkī, or a swimmer pushes off the blocks in an Olympic pool, there is a line of continuity stretching back to Duke's pioneering spirit. Surf schools worldwide display posters of Duke, and many surfers make pilgrimages to Waikīkī to surf the same breaks that Duke once dominated. For young Hawaiians in particular, Duke's story stands as a beacon, a local boy who honored his heritage and still conquered the world stage, all with humility and grace. 21. Key takeaways from Duke's legacy. Cultural preservation. Duke proved that preserving and sharing one's culture can create a profound impact on global society. By riding the waves in the style of his Hawaiian ancestors, he kept a piece of Polynesian heritage alive and spread it far beyond the islands. Sports innovation. His introduction of a refined flutter kick and the so-called Hawaiian crawl revolutionized competitive swimming techniques. Even though modern swimmers have refined the freestyle stroke further, Duke's contributions remain foundational. Ambassador of Aloha. Perhaps Duke's greatest legacy is the spirit of aloha he embodied. Through travel, demonstrations, and personal interactions, he showed that goodwill, kindness, and hospitality can win hearts and foster unity among diverse peoples. Humanitarian impact. Duke's ocean rescue heroics in Newport Beach demonstrated that athletic skills are not just for competition, they can be harnessed to save lives. His demonstration of using a surfboard for rescues paved the way for modern lifeguard practices. Timeless inspiration. Duke's story encourages future generations to approach both life and competition with humility, to remain connected to one's roots, and to strive for excellence while uplifting others. 22. Conclusion. The Eternal Wave. Duke Paua Kahanamoku Hulikohola. Kahanamoku's life spanned an era of immense change in Hawaiʻi, from a kingdom to a republic, then a territory, and finally a state of the United States. Throughout these shifts, Duke retained his strong Hawaiian identity and channeled it into achievements that transcended cultural and political boundaries. He reigned in the pool, setting records and winning medals, while simultaneously cultivating surfing's transition from a nearly lost tradition into a globally respected sport. He was a hero in the ocean not just for his athleticism, but for his life-saving courage. And he was a cultural emissary whose presence in Hollywood, at tourism events, and in the corridors of power always radiated the aloha spirit. Even now, so many years after his passing, one can stand on the golden sands of Waikīkī, look out at the surfers riding the gentle waves, and almost sense Duke's presence. The serenity, the joy of the ride, the camaraderie among surfers, and the welcoming spirit of Hawaii, these all speak of Duke's enduring gifts to the world. His life is a reminder that sometimes the biggest waves we ride are not the ones in the ocean, but the cultural and social waves that reshape how people view each other and themselves. Duke rode these waves with the same grace he showed on his surfboard, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire and unite. Aloha oe Duke, until we meet again.